Back in 1984, the Mums critically acclaimed The Nannies played at Stages Theater in Hollywood for 9 months to full houses. At one of the performances, the PR team for Nike came to see the show, and they loved it. They made a lucrative offer that we could not refuse. Nike was starting their first sportswear line and were doing a series of fashion shows throughout America and wanted us to be the entertainment. Since we were all financially strapped, we said yes. For the shows, we wore our colorful graffiti costumes designed by Marlene Stewart, and we performed in Texas, Chicago, St. Louis, Boston, and New York. In New York, we performed in the windows of Macy's department store. We took advantage of being in the Big Apple and booked ourselves in the trendiest clubs such as Danceteria, the Cat Club, and at the Limelight. We also performed for Andy Warhol's birthday lunch at the Factory. We were a surprise birthday present from his assistant, Paige Powell, who had been introduced to me by Anastasia Stakis. We surprised him and his lunch guests as they were eating. We juggled 9 fire torches, which took their breaths away. He was thrilled and said, "Wow, you guys are great," and invited us that night to join his entourage to the premiere of the Cars music video that he had directed. The premiere was held at the IT Club at the time called Area. We were experiencing the nightlife with Andy Warhol and Rick Ocasek and danced the night away with beautiful models. I remember dancing to a new breakout artist song called Borderline. Our costume designer, Marlene Stewart, would months later be costuming Madonna's first world tour. 2 months later, we had a 2-page color spread in Interview magazine. Had we arrived, or was it all an illusion? When we returned to Los Angeles, we partnered with actress Anastasia Stakis and leased the back part of a building on La Brea, just north of Wilshire, that was once owned by Charlie Chaplin. We were told it was used as a ballet studio for one of his mistresses. We never found out who she was or any documents to back that colorful story. Word had spread about our successful exploits in New York, and LA Weekly called us the best performance troupe in Los Angeles and put us on the cover page of their special Best of the Best issue. While in residence, we developed a play that was never produced called The Mum-Drum Club. Unfortunately, it did not pan out for various reasons. We moved to a new studio in Echo Park. It was actually a garage space that renowned potter Peter Shire graciously let us occupy. We literally and physically started kicking a soccer ball and new ideas around, not knowing where it was all going until, out of the blue, I got a call from Ron Saucy, the founder of and artistic director of the Odyssey Theater. "Hi, Roy. A play in the main theater is closing in 12 days and will lie empty for 4 weeks before the next play goes in. Do you want to revive the Nannies?" "Ah, yes," I said, "and I will talk to Nathan and Albie and get back to you as soon as possible." We talked and then called the co-producer of the Nannies, Paul Verdier, and he was not pleased that we would be taking the Nannies to another venue. Fair enough. We decided to write a new show simply called The Mums. We would have to conceive, write, and rehearse the new work to be ready for critics to review on opening night. All for one, one for all. We were up for the challenge, and with David Johnstone as our director and Cindy Slater as our stage manager, we knew we had a good chance of pulling in an audience. I called Ron back the next day and said yes. He was delighted, and the clock started ticking. Part 2, 24/7. We had the luxury of working in the performing space to test the boundaries of our creative pursuit. We were a tight-knit unit with lots of material. We were healthy and at the apex of our physical, creative, and performing skills. We had a top-notch support team. We opened with good reviews, good enough to play to full houses for the next 4 weeks. Albie's girlfriend, Nan Vernon's father, renowned Canadian actor John Vernon, had connections to a theater in Toronto, Toronto Workshop Productions, run by his good friend and artistic director George Luscombe, a larger-than-life gentleman. We sent reviews and pics, and George slotted us in for a 5-week summer run. We had 2 weeks for rewrites and to tweak whatever we needed to do, but pretty much the show stayed intact with very little changes. We did rename the show Rebound and flew ourselves, props and birds, and with our 3-person crew arrived in Toronto on July 28th. The theater provided a couple of rooms at a bed and breakfast 2-story Victorian just a block away. At that point, the mums were self-produced, and we had become savvy in negotiating a decent deal for the percentage of the ticket sales. On this run, Albie and I invested in promo T-shirts that proved to be a winner. Sadly, I don't have mine anymore. After each show, we met and signed our T-shirts that the audience purchased, and Albie and I tripled our investment. The money we made became our pocket money. The play was a smash hit. The 3 major newspapers all gave glowing reviews, and we were the must-see show in town. We worked it. We gave radio interviews, including their version of MTV. We promoted our show by doing a street parade on stilts and a street performance. We were the talk of the town. Someone mentioned that a small circus troupe from Quebec called Cirque du Soleil had just received a $3 million grant. We were flabbergasted and envious that the government had the vision to support the circus arts, but we were focused on our own success and vision to give them much thought. Plus, we had our own show to think about. Several years later, the founder, Guy, would be coming to my studio in Hollywood as a potential buyer of my artwork that he had seen hanging in a wonderful, trendy French restaurant in West Hollywood, run by 2 French brothers, Nicholas and Frederick. The club was called Puna na Souk, but that's another story to tell later. Part 3, Disaster Strikes, making lemonade out of juggling lemons. Nathan can tell it better than from his point of view, since it happened to him. Nathan had his appendix about to burst, and he had to have an emergency operation. We were stunned. We had only been performing for 2 weeks, and we had 3 weeks to go with fully booked houses. Albie and I huddled with David and Cindy, and we all agreed that we could not go out without Nathan. Albie, David, and I walked upstairs to George's office to break the bad and sad news. His response was not what we were expecting, and till this day forever grateful to what he said. David, as our director, broke the news, and George, sitting behind his grand desk with his grand Shakespearean voice, bellowed, "What? You're going to go back to Los Angeles with your tails between your legs?" A brief pause for effect. "You're going downstairs right now and rewrite the show. That's it." Followed by silence and a searing stare at us 3. His confidence and belief in us woke us up out of our self-defeating stupor hole we had fallen into. We were electrified by our encounter with George and went down to the stage and spent all night rewriting and rehearsing the new blocking for the show. We let Nathan know that the show would still be going on. I believe he was relieved that the show was not going to end because of his medical emergency. We did not have to cancel one performance. Our first night without Nathan was surreal and had the feeling of an opening night. The adrenaline was off the charts, and both of us were at the top of our game, and we exercised a controlled confidence and trust that carried us that evening and continued till the end of the successful run. Word had gotten out that one of the mums was in the hospital, and people came back to see the show and gave us moral support, and probably curious if we could pull it off. Of course, it was not as dynamic without Nathan in the lineup. His contribution was enormous, but Alvin and I, with our director David and stage manager Cindy, somehow managed to finesse our new version of Rebound in such a clever way that if you hadn't seen the original version, you wouldn't feel a major element/talent was missing. I will never forget how the city of Toronto lovingly embraced the mums that magical summer of '85, and how we fully rebounded from a potential downfall and bounced back. Most important, Nathan fully recovered, and we went on to have further theatrical adventures as the mums in New Zealand, Mexico, Japan, Brunei, and throughout the United States for decades to come. Epilogue. This story started with the successful 9-month run of the Nannies at Stages Theatre Center in Hollywood, thanks to the vision and founder and artistic director Paul Verdier. There, the theater critics and the audience took notice of our unique storytelling and production panache that brought the Nike team to sweep us up for a national promotional tour of America. And when we landed back to LA, getting a phone call from another visionary artistic director, Ron Saucy, at the Odyssey Theater in Los Angeles. And yet another visionary artistic director, George Luscombe, from Toronto Workshop Productions. All three men and their team believed and took the risk of investing in what the mums brought to their theaters. We could not have done these productions, The Nannies, The Mums, and Rebound, without the generous backing and foresight of these three independent artistic directors and their team of theater angels. Onward and upward.